We have multiple huge Leafs updates to go over today, as following what was an incredible game one. At least at practice, we have a bunch of updates in that regard. We also have the Leafs making and Craig Berube making an interesting lineup move. We're going to break all that down on this episode, as well as discuss a report that dropped earlier this morning that had fans very concerned. Stay tuned for all that on this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. 71% of you want to help us towards our big goal, our huge goal of 20,000 subscribers. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. There's a ton to go over today. Obviously, the Leafs are coming off of a massive win against the Ottawa Senators, and there's practice. It's playoff time. They practice every day. All these different things are happening. And we got a very scary report that came out. And let's not waste any more time. This came out, an hour or so ago. And it was that Anthony Stolarz is not on the ice as Leafs practice begins this morning. And everybody, myself included, were worried about specifically, of course, the I was going to call it a hit, the collision for Anthony Stolarz and the Senators player. But Darius, we have some good news on that front, as he is out this morning for rest, which means a few different things. A, he's going to be, all signs point to him playing in game 2 tomorrow. And B, he's fully healthy, just rest. He's all good. Fans are very concerned about this. And before we dive into a bunch of things, everybody was at practice today. So as it pertains to the injuries, we're looking good. And we'll dive into the moves in a minute here, but Stolarz is good to go.
Yeah, he's good to go. And I think this morning, the first thing that came out when they hit the ice for practice was, all your regular insiders were saying Leafs are on the ice for practice this morning and there's no Stolarz. So automatically everybody's like, oh no, that collision from yesterday, his knee's broken or whatever, the mind starts racing at his playoffs. But some good news from Craig Berube. He's just off for rest, which means he will play tomorrow. Exactly what that means. He didn't have to come in today, just rest, get ready to go for the game tomorrow. He did nothing wrong. He played great. Obviously, maybe you want the first goal back, but again, it's a game of bounces and a game of mistakes. So it is what it is. But they played a solid game. He played a good game, so he'll be ready to go tomorrow. And I think the rest of the group, they were only on the ice this morning for 15 minutes. They were going over a couple things, working on a couple things, but as you could tell from the intro video, like the mood was light. Everybody was having a good time. So they feel really good. They feel confident, which is a great thing heading into game 2 to kind of continue to build off this momentum too. So everything's good, but we do have a lineup change. The interesting decision from Craig Berube that, we didn't think he was going to change anything, but we'll get into it. There is a bit of a difference tomorrow.
And now that each game is only a day or so in between, there's not much turnaround time. Like you mentioned, a 15-minute practice. These practices aren't going to be heavy, but you still have to stay locked in. But again, for anyone concerned or missed the follow-up report that Stolarz is, he's absent, he is good to go. He will be playing in tomorrow's game. But let's dive into the lines today. And of course, you see Joseph Wall, Arthur Ektima, because Stolarz is absent due to rest. Now, Nyes, Matthews, Marner, and we're seeing a bunch of, mainly one change, which impacts, a bunch of things. So the second line now is Holmberg, Tavares, Nylander, McMahon, Domi, Robertson, Lorentz, Lawton, Yarncroke. So the first and fourth lines remain the same. They're swapping the second and third line. We saw this, I believe it was halfway through the second period, something like that, halfway through the game against the Senators yesterday, where they swapped Holmberg and Domi. And I want to get your thoughts on this. The third line yesterday was interesting. Even the second line was, very solid. Mainly Tavares and Nylander, though. Not as much Domi. Domi actually had a pretty bad start to that game. A lot of turnovers, a lot of, irresponsible plays. I don't think he had a great game in general. So they're moving him back down to the third line as the center and putting Holmberg on a wing, which is interesting because they're not putting Bobby McMahon on the wing. They want to keep McMahon and Robertson together. But other than that, they've made an interesting change. Not something I necessarily expected, but again, they made this change in the game yesterday, and they're going to be riding with it in game 2. But the headline of the Leafs changing something up following a 6-2 win, if you didn't watch the game, you wouldn't realize that they actually made this change in yesterday's game. But going with it and sticking with it in practice the next day is honestly quite surprising to me.
Yeah, and I think that not too surprising to me personally because of, how well the game went after they switched the lines and how poorly, like you mentioned, Domi played to start the game. So I think it makes total sense. Obviously, if you didn't watch the game, you're looking at the lineup cards from game 1 to game 2. You're like, oh, they did make a change, but not really because, last game they did this in the middle of the game. And Domi didn't have a good start to the game, right? So he doesn't deserve in that way to stay up with the second line. Holmberg goes up there. But I think it's more about getting that third line together. They've looked really good all season when they played together, and they looked good again last night when they were kind of rolling. All of them know what they're there to do. Robertson playing with a little bit of a mean streak as well, throwing some of the body around, and then obviously getting a couple opportunities offensively. So they look good. I think it's more about we know what the second line can do in terms of pairing, right? We know what Nylander can do with Tavares and then whoever else is there. We've seen it all season long. So I think it's more about the third line and how well they played and what they're going to be able to bring to the table for the Leafs. That is the story here. And we saw it last game. They're going to continue to roll. It's the same lineup in terms of, personnel who's actually playing. So not too much there, but they'll rock it this way, like they finished the game yesterday, and I think that they'll be fine with it. I have the utmost confidence in the Toronto Maple Leafs right now after yesterday's game.
Yeah, and the Pontus Holmberg, I don't think he had a fantastic game yesterday, but again, he's now moved up with John Tavares and William Nylander, so you can't really ask for many better partners there on the right wing, the center and the right wing position. Sorry, so it's going to be interesting there. And then, of course, your third line now has Domi centering it, which hopefully the third line can get it going a little bit. We know that in the pregame stream yesterday, we had some of you guys talking in the Collins about the third line being maybe a bit of an issue on the side of not matching up well with the Senators' third line, of course. And the fourth line was absolutely dominant. It was fantastic. They're going to be keeping that. They were dominant in that first period. You also, of course, see Myers, Camp, Pacioretty. Unless the Leafs start losing, I don't think they're going to get in. But at the same time, Camp and Pacioretty could be replacements. They will be replacements if anything happens there. And something else to note, obviously the blue line pairings. You have the first pairing now, which is Riley and Carlo, McCabe, Tanev, OEL, Benoit. I believe you had McCabe, Tanev as the first, pairing technically on paper prior to last game. But that's all just, that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But what matters here is that everyone is healthy. We, of course, towards the end of the game yesterday, we saw Nyes take a puck to the wrist. Of course, he scored right after. He's good. OEL coming off of his injury. He's good to go. Chris Tanev got in a huge scuffle there. Injuries are the biggest, I guess, the scariest thing, at least in this one day off, and was the scariest thing, especially as the game got chippy. Darius, I don't think it's going to get any less chippy starting tomorrow or in tomorrow's game. It's going to get continuously aggressive. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. And regarding the vibes of the team, very, very high right now. And everybody was there. Very short practice. It is the playoffs. So that makes sense. You see Craig Berube running on the whiteboard there. I believe that's Craig Berube. It looks like him from the very far angle. They're ready to go, and everybody is healthy. That is by far the biggest thing that I was looking for at the practice today. And, of course, a bit of a, I guess, not unexpected move regarding Holmberg and Domi seeing their success, but a move nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think that, what the Senators were doing yesterday, the trap they kind of fell into is the Leafs were playing very physical, but they were playing clean, right? And they were initiating. This is kind of what I was talking about. They were being the aggressor in that way, not in a dirty way. They were just being more physical, which then made the Senators, who are an inexperienced team, they had to respond to that, right? But they didn't respond in the correct way. And you never want to be the team that is responding because you're going to get the majority of the penalties and you're going to fall behind in not just the game, but in the series as well. So if the Leafs are able to do that and play above everything again, they're going to find success in this series. They just are. So they need to get back to doing exactly that and play their game. There's so much talk right now about how the Senators were better 5-on-5, which just isn't true, and that the Senators are going to settle down. I do believe that part. I think the Senators are going to come into game 2 and they're going to settle down a little bit. But the Leafs, at least to start, the Leafs have an opportunity here to continue to play their game and get the Sens trapped in that, what they did in game 1 again. So we're going to see, what happens in game 2. I'm expecting a much better game from Allmark as well, although he hasn't been great in the playoffs. We discussed that on stream as well. So I am expecting a little bit of a different game, but I think the Leafs, as long as they stick to their game plan and don't become like they've been so many years in the past, the team that retaliates, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I also think they're going to be good to go. A couple other things here. Again, 15-minute practice. And in case you missed in the video earlier, this is what Linus Ullmark had to say about his performance. It's not as bad as you think it is now that you've done the first one. You've got to get that one out of the way. You know how it feels. You got the jitters, you got the butterflies or whatever. It's a good thing to have these nerves, but you can't let it take over. And that was Linus Ullmark's message to the Sens playoff rookies, which is interesting. Talking about the rookies himself, he needs to step it up as well. And hopefully he doesn't. And hopefully the Leafs take care of business in tomorrow's game. It's very, I think I'm coming around. I'm very happy that these games aren't as spread out as they were last year because we get playoff hockey once again tomorrow, and it's going to be an exciting time. So we'll keep you up to date with all the latest Leafs news. Make sure to subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching.